अष्टोत्तर श्रील भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जय। नित्य विश्व विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तर श्रील भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्य विश्व महाभागवत श्री अक्षर बाबूजी महाराज की जय। नित्य विश्व श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नित्य विश्व वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबूजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूप गौरी गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल दास रघुनाथ सार गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रमानंदारी श्री गोपाल शारद वृंद की जय। नाम चय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुर वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट विराट गिरिराज महाराज की जय। राधा कुंज श्याम कुंज यमुना गंगा तुलसी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। श्रीताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायणति नामिने। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिशे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकाय तदालय कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तरभक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तम् अनपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहावो पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सार्वभूतहृदयमुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्णं पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तना हृदन्तस्थो ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतम्। नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। तवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नायमां चरणान्तिकम्। भक्त्या विहीन अपराधलक्षय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितरङ्गमदे कृपामयि त्वां शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दं। भज श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्तवृन्द। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hey Gauraj, I'm just doing a Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam reading right now. It's a live reading on Facebook, so I'll message you when I'm finished. Then we can talk. All right. So where are we? Okay. So recap of yesterday. We read the 10 characteristics of the 10 topics of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. The highest topic is the 10th topic. Definitions of the 10 topics of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And then today we're going to read how Paramatma is the shelter of the soul. And we're going to begin reading about creation, about how Garbhodaksha Vishnu lies on the Garbhodak ocean. And let's just see what those 10 topics are of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Okay, so number 1 is Sarga. That's the elementary creation of the 16 items of matter. Okay, so that's all the elements and everything like that. Then Visarga, interaction of the modes of material nature. Okay, creation by Brahma. Then Sthanam means the victory of the Lord of Vaikuntha. In other words, it's the geography of the universe. Okay, Poshanam, maintenance. His causeless mercy. Manvantar, the reign of the Manus, which give they establish the perfect occupational duty for humankind. Then Uti, the impetus for activity, desire for fruit of work. Then Ishanukata, incarnations of the Supreme Lord and his different activities together with the activities of his great devotees. Nirodha, winding up, the merging of the living entity with mystic lying down of Mahavishnu. Mukti, permanent situation of the living entity's form, gives up the changeable bodies. Then Ashray, the cause of creation, maintenance, and destruction of the universe, who is known as Paramatma and Parabrahma. Ashray, the supreme shelter. Those are the 10 different topics of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. All right, let's start. Okay. Yodhyatmiko yam purusha sosa veva didaivika. Yas tatra bhaya vicheda purusha hyadipotika. The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the adhyatmic, is the adhyatmic person. And the individual controlling deity of the senses are called the adidaivik. The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the adipotic person. Just looking for the word eyeballs. I don't see the word eyeballs anywhere in the word for word. Purport. The supreme controlling Samam Bonam is the personality of Godhead and its plenary portion of Paramatma, or the Super-Soul manifestation. In the Bhagavad Gita 10:42, it is said, Atava bahunaitena kim gyatena tavarjuna Vishtabhyaham idam kritsnam ekang shena stito jagat. All the controlling deities like Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva are different manifestations of the Paramatma feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who exhibits himself in such manners by entering into each and every universe generated from him. But still, apparently, there are divisions of the controller and the controlled. For example, in the food controlling department, the controller of food is a person made of the same ingredients as the person who is controlled. Similarly, each and every individual in the material world is controlled by the higher demigods. For example, we have our senses, but the senses are controlled by superior controlling deities. We cannot see without light, and the supreme controller of the light is the sun. The sun god is in the sun planet, and we, the individual human beings, or any other being on this earth, are all controlled by the sun god as far as our eyes are concerned. Similarly, all the senses we have are controlled by the superior demigods, who are also as much living entities as we are. But one is empowered while the other is controlled. The controlled living entity is called the Adhyatmic person, and the controller is called the Adhidaivic person. All these positions in the material world are due to different fruitive activities. Any individual living being can become the sun god or even Brahma or any other god in the upper planetary system by a higher grade of pious work. And similarly, one becomes controlled by the higher demigods by lower grades of fruitive activities. So every individual living entity is subject to the supreme control of the Paramatma, who puts everyone in different positions of controller and the controlled. That which distinguishes the controller and controlled, i.e. the material body, is called the Adibhotik Purush. The body is sometimes called Purush, as confirmed in the Vedas in the following hymn. Sava Esha Purusho na Rasamaya. This body is called the Anarasa embodiment. This body depends on food. The living entity which is embodied does not eat anything. However, because the owner is the living entity which is embodied does not eat anything. However, he does not eat anything. The living entity which is embodied does not eat anything, however, because the owner is spirit in essence. The material body requires replacement of matter for the wearing and tearing of the mechanical body. Therefore, the distinction between the living entity and the controlling planetary deities is in the Anarasamaya body. The sun may have a gigantic body, and the man may have a smaller body, but all these visible bodies are made of matter. Nonetheless, the sun god and the individual person, who are related as the controller and the controlled, are the same spiritual parts and parcels of the Supreme Being, and it is the Supreme Being who places different parts and parcels in different positions. And thus the conclusion is that the Supreme Person is the shelter of all. Ekam ekatara bhave yadanopalabhamahe tritayam tatrayo veda sar atma svashaya shaya. All three of the above-mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent. In the absence of one, another is not understood. But the Supreme Being who sees every one of them as the shelter of the shelter is independent of all, and therefore he is the supreme shelter. Purport. There are innumerable living entities, one dependent on the other in a relationship of the controlled and the controller. But without the medium of perception, no one can know or understand who is the controlled and who is the controller. For example, the sun controls the power of our vision. We can see the sun because the sun has its body, and the sunlight is useful only because we have eyes. Without our having eyes, the sunlight is useless, and without sunlight, the eyes are useless. Thus they are interdependent, and none of them is independent. Therefore, the natural question arises concerning who made them interdependent. The one who has made such a relationship of interdependence must be ultimately completely independent. As stated in the beginning of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the ultimate source of all interdependent objectives is the complete independent subject. This ultimate source of all interdependence is the Supreme Truth, or Paramatma, the Supersoul, who is not dependent on anything else. He is Swashraya. He is only dependent on himself, and thus he is the supreme shelter of everything. Although Paramatma and Brahman are subordinate to Bhagavan, because Bhagavan is Purushottam, or the super person, he is the source of the Supersoul also. In the Bhagavad Gita 15:18, Lord Krishna says that he is the Purushottam and the source of everything, and thus it is concluded that Sri Krishna is the ultimate source and shelter of all entities, including the Supersoul and Supreme Brahman. Even accepting that there is no difference between the Supersoul and the individual soul is dependent on the Supersoul for being liberated from illusion of material energy. The individual is under the clutches of illusory energy, and therefore, although qualitatively one with the Supersoul, he is under the illusion of identifying himself with matter. And to get out of this illusory conception of factual life, the individual soul has to depend on the Supersoul to be recognized as one with him. In that sense also, the Supersoul is the supreme shelter, and there is no doubt about it. The individual living entity, the jiva, is always dependent on the Supersoul, Paramatma, because the individual soul forgets his spiritual identity, whereas the Supersoul, Paramatma, does not forget his transcendental position. In the Bhagavad Gita, these separate positions of the Jiva Atma and Paramatma are specifically mentioned. In the fourth chapter, Arjuna, the Jiva soul, is represented as forgetful of his many, many previous births. But the Lord, the Supersoul, is not forgetful. The Lord even remembers when he taught Bhagavad Gita to the sun god some billions of years before. The Lord can remember such millions and billions of years as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 7.26 as follows. Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu veda na kashtana. The Lord in his eternal blissful body of knowledge is fully aware of all that happened in the past, that which is going on at the present, and also what will happen in the future. But in spite of his being the shelter of both the Paramatma and Brahman, persons with a poor fund of knowledge are unable to understand him as he is. The propaganda of the identity of the cosmic consciousness with the consciousness of the individual living entities is completely misleading, because even such a person or individual soul as Arjuna could not remember his past deeds, although he is always with the Lord. And what can the tiny ordinary man, falsely claiming to be one with the cosmic consciousness, know about his past, present, and future? Purushondam vinirvidya yadaso sa vinirgata atmano yanamam vichan apos srakshit chuchi suchi. Purusha, the supreme, After separating the different universes, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, the place of appearance for the first Purusha avatar, entered into each of the separate universes, desiring to lie on the created transcendental water, Garbhodak. So after separating the universes, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, entered in. So now there's this Karana Dakshay Vishnu and Garbha Dakshay Vishnu. verses is 10. After analysis of the living entities and the Supreme Lord, Paramatma, the independent source of all other the independent source of all other living beings, Srila Shukadeva Goswami is now presenting the prime necessity for devotional service to the Lord, which is the only occupational business of all living entities. The Supreme Lord Shri Krishna and all his plenary portions and extensions of plenary portions are non-different from one another, and thus the supreme independence is in each and every one of them. In order to prove this, Shukadeva Goswami, as promised to King Parikshit, describes herein the independence of the Purusha Avatar personality of Godhead, even in the sphere of the material creation. Such activities of the Lord are also transcendental, and therefore they are also lila, or pastimes, of the Absolute Lord. Such pastimes of the Lord are very conducive to the hearers for self-realization and the field of devotional service. Some may argue, why not then relish the transcendental lila of the Lord as exhibited in the land of Mathura and Vrindavan, which are sweeter than anything in the world? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur replies that the pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan are meant to be relished by the advanced devotees of the Lord. Neophyte devotees will misunderstand such supreme transcendental activities of the Lord, and therefore the Lord's pastimes in the material sphere related to creation, maintenance, and destruction are verily relishable by the prakrita, or mundane devotees of the Lord. As the yoga system mainly based on bodily exercises is meant for the person who is too much attached to the bodily conception of existence, similarly, the Lord's pastimes related to the creation and destruction of the material world are for those who are too materially attached. For such mundane creatures, the functions of the body and the functions of the cosmic world, through physical laws in relationship with the Lord, are also therefore included in understanding of the lawmaker, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The scientists explain the material functions by so many technological terms of material law, but such blind scientists forget the lawmaker. The Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam points out the lawmaker. One should not be amazed by the mechanical arrangement of the complicated engine or dynamo, but one should praise the engineer who creates such a wonderful working machine. That is the difference between the devotee and the non-devotee. Devotees are always full with praising the Lord, who directs the physical laws. In the Bhagavad Gita 9.10, the direction of the Lord upon the material nature is described as follows. Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunanena konteya jagar viparivartate. The material nature, full of physical laws, is one of my many different energies. Therefore, it is neither independent nor blind. Because I am transcendentally all-powerful, simply by my... I didn't find any matching places. I was not talking to you. Because I am transcendently all-powerful, simply by my glancing over material nature, the physical laws of nature work so wonderfully. The actions and reactions of the physical laws work on that account, and thus the material world is created, maintained, and annihilated again and again. Men with a poor fund of knowledge, however, become astonished by studying the physical laws both within the construction of the individual body and within the cosmic manifestation, and foolishly they decry the existence of God, taking it for granted that the physical laws are independent, without any metaphysical control. The Bhagavad Gita 9:11 replies to this foolishness in the following words. Avajananti mamuda manusham tanumashritam param bhavam ajananta mama bhuta maheshwaram. The foolish men, the muda, do not know the personality of Godhead and his eternal form of bliss and knowledge. The foolish man thinks of the transcendental body of the Lord as something like his own, and therefore he cannot think of the unlimited controlling power of the Lord, who is not visible in the acting of the physical laws. The Lord is, however, visible to the naked eyes of people in general when he descends himself by his own personal potency. Lord Krishna incarnated himself as he is and played very wonderful parts as the Lord himself, and the Bhagavad Gita concerns such wonderful actions and knowledge. Yet foolish men will not accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Lord. Generally, they consider the infinitesimal and infinite features of the Lord because they themselves are unable to become either the infinitesimal or the infinite. But one should know that the infinite and infinitesimal sizes of the Lord are not his highest glories. The most wonderful manifestation of the Lord's power is exhibited when the infinite Lord becomes visible to our eyes as one of us. Yet his activities are different from those of the finite beings. Lifting a mountain at the age of 7 years and marrying 16,000 wives in the prime of his youth are some of the examples of his infinite. But the Mudas, after seeing them or hearing about them, decry them as legendary and take the Lord as one of them. They cannot understand that the Lord Sri Krishna, although in the form of a human being by his own potency, is the Supreme Lord with full potency as the Supreme Controller. When, however, the Mudas give submissive and oral reception to the message of the Lord as in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam or in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam through the channel of disciplic succession, the Mudas also become devotees of the Lord by the grace of his pure devotees. And for this reason only, either in the Bhagavad Gita or in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the pastimes of the Lord in the material world are delineated for the benefit of those men with a poor fund of knowledge. Tasvavasit srishtasu sahasam parivatsaram tena narayano nama yadapa purusho bhava. That Supreme Person is not impersonal, and therefore is distinctly a nara, or person. Therefore, the transcendental water created from the Supreme Nara is known as Nara. And because he lies down on that water, he is known as Narayan. Dravyam karma cha kalascha svabhava jiva evacha yadanugrahata santi na santi yad upekshaya. One should definitively know that all the material ingredients, activities, time, and modes, and the living entities who are meant to enjoy them all, exist by his mercy only. And as soon as he does not care for them, everything becomes non-existent. Purport. The living entities are the enjoyers of the material ingredients, time, modes, etc., because they want to lord it over the material nature. The Lord is the supreme enjoyer, and the living entities are meant to assist the Lord in his enjoyment and thus participate in the enjoyment of everyone. The enjoyer and the enjoyed both participate in enjoyment, but, deluded by the illusory energy, the living entities want to become the enjoyer like the Lord, although they are not meant for such enjoyment. The jivas, the living entities, are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita as the Lord's superior nature, or the para prakriti. And so also it is mentioned in the Vishnu Puran. Therefore, the living entities are never the Purushas or the factual enjoyers. As such, the spirit of enjoyment by the living entity in this material world is false. In the spiritual world, the living entities are pure in nature, and therefore they are associates in the enjoyment. They are associates in the enjoyment of the Supreme Lord. In the material world, the soul of enjoyment of the living entities by dint of their own actions, their karma, gradually fades by the laws of nature, and thus the illusory energy to the ears of the conditioned souls that they should become one with the Lord. This is the last snare of the illusory energy. When the last illusion is also cleared off by the mercy of the Lord, the living entity again becomes reinstated in its original position and becomes actually liberated. For this attainment of liberation from the material clutches, the Lord creates the material world, maintains it for some time, 1,000 years of his measurement as stated in the previous verse, and then again annihilates it by his will. The living entities are therefore completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord, and all their so-called enjoyments by scientific improvement are crushed into dust when the Lord desires. All right. That is today. Jai Grantaraj. Little mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jai Shri Sachinandan Gaur Hari Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai, Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju Ki Jai. Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashatashmad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Srila Gurudev Ki Jai. Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashatashmad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srila Param Gurudev Ki Jai. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Anantapati Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai. Kartik Vrat Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Anantapati Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shnitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Vrindai Tulsidevai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Satyavataya Namo Namo Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyaeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.